So tell us, what was your most memorable childhood story?
Well, I'm gonna say this one time I got lost in the city, and it was memorable because a lot of good things happened, and thinking about it, it was very scary. But things are never really scary when they happen. So here's what happened. My parents took me on a tour of New York to come see all the sights, the Empire State Building, the museums and stuff. Things that I didn't enjoy because I wasn't old enough to. And then at some point, I walked away from them in a separate direction, and I didn't know what I was doing. I just felt that being with them was boring, so being away might be a little interesting. And I ran into this guy. His name was Wilkins. He was just the nicest man I've ever met. Just shit happened to him. He was living on the street, but he had good things to tell. He really appreciated the city, and he told me a lot about it, more about it than I could have ever known, because he lives, breathes the city. This is literally his house. And so I hung out with him for about 10 minutes. I walked around. Eventually, though, I ran into a cop and asked me why am I alone, because at the time I'd like to say 7 or 8, probably 8. And so he didn't know. I didn't know where I was. He called my parents. They came, scooped me up. My mom was scared shitless, yelling hysterically. My dad was just stoic, but on the inside I could tell he was scared and shaken. And from that moment on, until I'd like to say I was 11, I wore the little kid leashes so that you're never too far away from your parents. Well, that's my story. Thanks.
Alright, thank you very much.
Hello. This narrative is about my life growing up in the city. I started off as a young toddler, sitting there in the playground. The reason I'm wearing pink, not because I'm a girl, but my brother dressed me up for kicks and giggles. But I was very sad. So I soon grew up, and the events that we're about to see will be my growing up in the city of New York.
Riding in the stroller in the city was a really cool experience. I got to experience all sorts of sights and sounds and smells. That's my dad pushing me along.
Here I am waiting for the bus. I spent the majority of my life waiting for a bus. We're at Coney Island right now. And that bus never came, so I walked home.
As a young adult, I got a job delivering Chinese food in the city. I had to work days to go to night school at night. And this working hard led me to going to college, and eventually I ended up getting married. Started my life
Macaulay Honors College.
at Macaulay Honors College.
Her name was Zi Wu, and I met her in Chinatown one day when I was delivering. She's so beautiful, so Asian. She's my Asian flower. I call her Lotus Petal sometimes. Anyway, so this is my wedding. We served pork fried rice, Szechuan style, and that's my mom in the back right there. That's her. Look at her. Oh, she's toothless. It's so cute. Anyway, so I'm happy now.
As I grew older and began to think about the prospect of having my own children, I thought about my ancestors, about when they first came to New York. What was the city like when they were here? Thinking about them is a big part in my journey and changing throughout my life.
Here's my job. I used to work at Lehman Brothers, but after the collapse, now I have no place to go. Now I'm trying to pick up the pieces to my life and figure out what to do with myself. I'm having a midlife crisis. Hopefully I'll find work and a job someplace.
After the downfall of Wall Street, I realized that it's time that I start to pursue my real passion, art.
Life in the city is just so fast sometimes. In motion, Always felt like I was running. But I had those moments where I stopped and thought, with my child, with my family, with my art. And I loved living out life in New York.
This is me now, much older, nearing the end days of my life. It's a picture of me when I was younger. You could see the difference between then and now. But But now I've realized how fast life goes at you, and that life is a series of changes and emotion, and you don't know, it's a wild roller coaster ride. You don't know what'll happen. But was it worth it? I'd say definitely. But that's the end of my story. Thank you.
One of the things that I like about living in cities, especially driving in cities, is the empowerment that comes from being able to battle it out with other cars and traffic. So I would say that the growth that comes from being in a city, especially if you drive and have to parallel park all the time, is just learning how to be a little bit more I guess opportunistic with your driving, and that actually applies to other areas in life.
All right, thank you.
One of the things I've noticed about my experiences in cities, because I've lived in several, but I've been in New York off and on between teaching since the early 80s and late 70s, is that I seem to always be here during disasters. I was here for 9/11, and I was here for stock market crash and the last Republican convention. And also in Iowa, we had a huge storm, a huge flood last year. So a lot of my growth has been from encountering really large-scale public disaster situations that if I hadn't been in a city, I wouldn't have experienced it in the same way. Certainly that applies to life.
All right, thank you.